Chemistry students. So what we're going to learn today is how to name molecular compounds. So molecular compounds are made of two nonmetals that share electrons in order to achieve a full valence shell. Now, naming these compounds is a little bit different from what we did in our last unit when we were naming ionic compounds. With ionic compounds, we were relying on math. We were relying on the balance of charges, on making the compound neutral in order to figure out what subscripts we needed to add in order to indicate how many of each element are found in the ionic crystal. But here with molecular compounds, it's a little bit different. Here, instead of using math and charges, we are going to use prefixes in order to determine what our subscripts are. So let's take a look. I put a purple star next to the very first table that I wanted to look at here. And you can see that the authors did this first example for you. So here we're looking at CLF. So this is not the capital I, that's an L. So we're looking at chlorine and fluorine. So the number of atoms of the first element here is simply 1, because if you look, there's no subscript or like a small number written a little bit below and to the right of chlorine. And so if there's no number there, you automatically assume that it's a number 1. But if you look at fluorine, you'll see that off to the right, you have the number 5. And so ClF5 simply has 1 atom of chlorine and 5 atoms of fluorine. And if we take a look at the name of the compound, this is chlorine pentafluoride. And so, because chlorine only has 1 atom, we don't have any prefix in front of it. But since fluorine has 5 atoms, we have the prefix penta in front of it. All right, so that was the first example there, but now let's take a look at our next one. Here we have ClF, and we have no subscripts at all. So the number of atoms of the first element here are automatically 1, and the number of atoms of the second element is also 1. So remember that if you have no subscript, that's okay. It doesn't mean you have 0. It just means that you only have 1, because we don't write the 1s in chemistry. And the name of this is chlorine monofluoride. And what I want to call your attention to is that even though both elements only have 1 atom, notice that we only put a prefix for 1, mono, in front of the second element, in front of the fluoride. Notice that we're not putting a prefix in front of the very first element that is listed, until we come down to the bottom of the table where we have N2O5. So the number of atoms of the first element, which is N, is simply 2. And we have 5 oxygens, and take a look at the name, dinitrogen pentoxide. And so, since we have more than 1 atom of the first element listed, we do use a prefix. That prefix is di. And again, since we have 5 oxygens, then we're using the prefix pent. So if you're not sure about what all of these different prefixes mean, that's quite all right, because you're going to know them after you finish this whole exercise. So the last comment before I leave you today is just to remind you that molecular compounds are formed between 2 nonmetals that share electrons. So work well on this, and I think that you're going to pick up on it pretty quickly, but of course, ask if you have questions. All right, enjoy the learning today. Bye.